The beauty of this manifestation practice is we're not manifesting to get each area of our life in perfect alignment. We're actually just moving forward on one track, and each manifestation and new opportunity is catapulting all the other areas of your life.
From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacey Phillips. As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. Part of our manifestation process entails expanding past your limiting subconscious beliefs. Therefore, by tuning into this podcast with interviews from experts, thought leaders, spiritual teachers, scientists, and those with neural manifestation success stories, you're starting the process of expanding your subconscious in order to see to believe that anything you desire is possible. And by pressing play, the process begins.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Expanded Podcast. Jessica here. So it's beginning to be that time of year again when the holidays are approaching us. We're starting to think about New Year's intentions, what we want to call in for the next year, how we want to wrap up this year. And it's actually such a beautiful and powerful time for manifestations. Our triggers are heightened. We're starting to take inventory of what worked this past year and what didn't. And we start to look forward to a version of ourselves we hope to be in the new year. The really exciting part is we don't need to wait until January to start that. We can start it right now. So we have an incredible challenge that we're doing the month of December all the way through January to run you through into the new year called the Manifestation Challenge. We did the Magnetism Challenge last year and had so much success. 91% of the people that participated were able to manifest something on the other side of the challenge. 91%. So that means if you join the challenge with us, there is a very high probability that your manifestation will connect with you in the new year. This challenge is a bit more robust from last year, really actionable and accountable, and we're really trying to handhold you through it. So if you guys have not worked through the manifestation process, you're in a slump with your manifestations, things aren't quite coming through, you really want to commit, but you're unable to find the time or keep yourself accountable to continue on with the work, or you're brand new and you've been thinking about doing this for a long time, but weren't sure when, now's the time to join. When you join the pathway, you can participate in the Manifestation Challenge. We're going to walk you through how to manifest, all of the daily reprogramming, taking inventory over this past year, seeing what worked for us, what didn't, and then start to call in the new version of self we want to connect with on the other side for 2022. You'll craft your list with us, get us all set, ready to go, and even get some support during the holidays because I know it can be really triggering. And the really exciting part is this year we have 4 live calls. So we have 2 calls with Lacey and I and 2 calls with the coaches to really answer your questions, get clarity on what you're calling in, and help you step by step through this process. This is a $225 value that we're offering completely free if you are in the pathway with us. So this is like full access. You get to ask questions directly. We get to handhold you through the process. And we found that the reason these challenges are so effective is because we're putting this intention to do it together. We have a 6-week calendar. It's totally feasible to do through the holidays. We have some off days and down days, and it's really going to be the most supportive thing to help connect with the new version of you want to see in the next year. And we kicked off the manifestation challenge with our first live call with Lacey and I. It was such a success. It was so wonderful getting to connect with so many of you. We gave you the action plan of finding an accountability buddy inside of the Mighty Networks community group, which is free in the Pathway membership. Don't worry, it is not too late to join. You get a recording of the live call in case you missed it inside the Manifestation Challenge portal. And I just want to thank everyone that was able to tune in for the live call. It was such a joy connecting with so many of you. And I can't wait to continue the process with you and walk you through step by step. It's going to be such a magnetic time of the year. And what's really exciting is through the month of December, we have one of our best sales of the year going on. So check the show notes for a link to our sale code to get into the pathway for one of our lowest rates of the year. That again is for new members and can't be applied retroactively. So make sure to look out for new insights for the Manifestation Challenge. It will all be released live on December 1st within the pathway membership. And we are so excited to connect with you. It's going to be an incredible year. So in today's episode, we have covered a lot about patterning and energetics in a lot of the recent episodes, and you guys are wanting more and having more questions on that. So we decided to cover an episode that solely focuses on how to really understand, to pull apart your personal patterning by giving very clear examples. So today we have our marketing director, Grace Abbott, who is seriously one of the most magnetic people I know, on to share her story of how she manifested her dream home and space. And we also have stories from some TBM members really walking through step by step how they were able to decipher what their patterning is, how they can step through fear in order to find magnetism on the other side. So today we are joined by our marketing director, Grace Abbott. Welcome, Grace.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Grace is one of our magnetic team members, and she has a recent manifestation story that I think will really help highlight this and help to teach us. So I'm going to kick us off with a little quote here. If you don't know your own patterns, how can you stop repeating them? I think this idea of understanding our patterning goes perfect. We just kicked off the manifestation challenge on Wednesday. It's not too late to join for anyone out there who's like, what? I want to do this. You just have to be a Pathway member. And we also have our sale going on right now. So you can sign up for an amazing low rate and join the Pathway and do the challenge with us. But there's so much inventory, especially when we're starting fresh, whether you've done the TBM work before or you're just coming back to it, to really understand why we're doing what we're doing so it can become conscious and we can start to rewrite those pathways. Grace, how have you found you've been able to identify some of the patterns in your life or know when things are in flow and when maybe you're looping an old low self-worth piece that you need to work on?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the practice of starting to notice and almost label your thoughts. So I don't know if you've read the book, The Untethered Soul, or the concept that, there's your consciousness and then there's the monkey brain thoughts going on. And if you can start to kind of detach from your thoughts and look at them and say, oh, that was a trigger, or that made me feel a heightened emotion, or that made me feel lower self-worth. If you can sort of get out of stewing in feelings and emotions and take a step back and not shame yourself for feeling them or not feel like, it's bad to have feelings, but instead just be able to have a healthy distance from them and spot them, then I think triggers, feelings, patterns start to become a lot more impersonal. And the more you do that, the better you get at seeing, oh, when this feeling comes out, it's because that's about to happen. Or when I'm in a situation with that person, this feeling comes up. I think creating some distance between yourself and your feelings gives yourself an opportunity to really watch your own patterning versus, getting so sucked into it that you're in a loop that you can't get out of.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny too, because like Daniel and I are very conscious in our patterning and self-care and self-help and really self-actualization work. And we're very aware of our patterns. And it's funny because it seems that there needs to be a little bit of a space between you're triggered by something, you have a heightened emotional reaction, and then like a little bit of time to kind of calm the nervous system. And then you're like, okay, I felt that because of X, Y, and Z. And so because Daniel and I know each other so well, whenever either of us have a heightened emotion, we're like, you're just doing that because you're projecting your fear of blah, blah, blah. And in the moment, you're like, how can you say that to me?
Totally.
But then when you go back, you're like, oh, they're so right. But you almost need that sort of buffer in between to calm your nervous system. And that's why we have the DIs or any other things that really bring down that elevation. And then you can start to see clearly.
Right. And I think the more you get used to, having those experiences and then being able to see them in hindsight, you get better at being able to do that in real time. I've had some situations recently where I felt emotionally heightened because like a past pattern has come up in a friend dynamic or in a dating situation. And I think I've had so many years of looking back on triggers and noticing what they're associated with that now, even when I'm feeling physically triggered, I can still be like, okay, I know that this is related to that thing. I'm feeling upset right now. I'm going to feel my feelings and move through it. But it feels a lot less personal because I'm able to have that space between the feeling and where it's coming from.
Yeah. And then as you start healing those pain points, then the trigger is less and less and less intense. If it's even coming up at all anymore, then you're like, what else can I learn here? How else can I continue to heal this space?
Totally. And I've noticed recently, I've had more of a kind of triggered feeling time. And I'm not somebody that's usually very triggered, but I've realized that it's old stuff coming up that instead of healing, I just sort of moved out of those situations. So like I used to have kind of a toxic boss situation where I'd get a lot of anxiety when the boss even sent me a message. And instead of healing that old wound, I just moved into a work situation where I didn't have a triggering boss anymore. So that doesn't mean that that feeling or trigger isn't still underneath the surface. And I've noticed as, I've been in sort of a heightened state, which I think all brought me to my most recent manifestation. I was sharing this with Lacey the other day. She sent me an email and I was overcome with anxiety. And I was like, wait a second, I don't have this dynamic with Lacey. Why do I feel anxious? And then I sort of put together that that was some old stuff. I needed to go back and, bring through a DI and do the workaround because it's time for me to progress. And there's stuff maybe that's dormant under the surface that I can just move out of the way.
What's so helpful about that example too is that whenever we say run into the fire so you can really learn your lesson, that's kind of what we're talking about. Because you had the triggering boss in the past and you took aligned action to manifest a new work situation where that dynamic was not occurring. You avoided dealing with that emotion and your worth, grew because of that and all of those things. But the subconscious healing didn't necessarily take place. And so if you, let's say, couldn't manifest that new job that was more healing and integrated, then you would probably attract a boss that was triggering again, and you would have to face that head on. But so even though you took that action in that one moment, you still needed to see it on a different level. And you could even see it, I'd be curious, in friendships. Does that dynamic present in, I don't know, other clients or so, I'm curious if that, whatever the dynamic was, the energetics between you and the toxic boss in the past, has that come up in different times over the years other than just job?
Yeah. What's interesting about the most recent situation that I explained was a couple days earlier, I had been in a group dynamic with friends and a triggering dynamic from the past came up. And then when I had that experience last, being in a triggering friend group, it was around the time that I had the toxic boss. So it was almost like I had reverted back to like a younger, emotionally less mature version of myself in a lot of ways. And then triggers from that time started popping up because I haven't been in a friend dynamic where I felt that sense of like, I could be alienated, or these people might not like me, or I could do something wrong in a few years. And when I started feeling that, then other triggers that I had kind of in that energetic space from a lifetime before started popping up. And I was able to be like, oh my gosh, this is all my old stuff from like 2015, all at once to be healed. I had the ability to see, this is old stuff. I don't currently deal with these issues. I'm not at risk of being alienated by this friend group, or I'm not going to get in trouble with my boss, but these are still triggers that exist, and they're all kind of coming to the surface at the same time.
It's also really cool because you also manifested something huge on the other side of all these things occurring. I'm interested to go during the timeline because I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, was this the last piece of sort of integration that needed to take place in order for your manifestation to come through?
Yeah, I think so. And it was like maybe a couple weeks ago on a Sunday, and I was sort of moving through all these feelings, and I was talking to Lacey on the phone, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm having a lot of triggers come up, and it's all really old stuff. I wonder what this is. And, I just really talked things with her out on the phone. And, I spent that day kind of being quiet and getting into my space and my routine and reclaiming my own sense of self-worth and playing ping pong with those thoughts that try and pop up that tell you someone's mad at me, someone's not going to like me, all of that kind of stuff, and working through DIs with it all. And then it was that Thursday that I manifested my new spot. So it's really interesting to see how that was, the most tumultuous emotional time that seemingly came up due to nothing. It was just like old emotional junk. And then once I saw it for what it was and decided to tackle it head on instead of just burying it, a couple of days later, a manifestation did come through.
Oh, so cool. Okay, so tell us, what was the manifestation that you were calling in? And what did that process look like? Like when you first got the ping that this was something you wanted, how did you feel about the likelihood of it happening then to the progression of all of it and being expanded along the way?
So I recently manifested an amazing place in Topanga, which is like a cool little canyon community right next to Malibu in California. And that's actually where Lacey lives. And I have sort of new friends and community I've made over the last year that live over there. I remember when Lacey first moved there visiting and being like, man, I would never want to live over here. It's so isolating. I would never be able to date anyone or meet anyone. It feels like, it's just kind of a little mountain town and it would be harder to meet people. Whereas now I live on the east side of LA in Silver Lake, and it's so walkable and I see people everywhere. And it could feel a little scary to move from a place where I literally see people I know at the grocery store on a walk to moving to an isolated, quote unquote, canyon somewhere. So anyways, I remember feeling that 2 years ago. And then over the last couple years, during quarantine and over the last year here in 2021, I've been spending more and more time in Topanga with friends, working with Lacey, going to events there, going to restaurants, doing more community activities. And I also started going to a church over in Malibu. I met some guys my age who live in Malibu. Like all these little things started popping up to show me that, oh, there is community in that area. And, there is possibility of me having friends, community, dating experiences, all that kind of stuff. So in retrospect, when I look at the past year, I see how like my first notion of that being an isolating place was sort of slowly broken down by all of these little experiences that I had. And then during the summer, I ended up, driving over to that area so much. One of my friends was like, well, you should move over here. You're already spending 2 hours in the car, 3 times a week. And, it's taking up a lot of time at that rate. Like I might as well just drive back to my current neighborhood when I want to go over there. So at that point, I was open to it, but, I wasn't really taking any action to move over there. And I remember on a Sunday, I was hanging with Lacey and Max and our friend Mar, and Mar lives in Malibu, and, she's sort of around my age in the same financial situation. So she sort of showed me that, oh, it would be possible to move over here and find a place that was in my price range and all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, in the context of that conversation, everyone was like, so hard to find a place over here. There's no inventory, and like referencing friends that lived in the area who paid a couple thousand more than I would ever want to pay.
And a lot of people own property there too, which is sort of like a different way to approach this as well. Most people going to this area tend to buy homes, and renting there seems kind of scarce, or so you were told.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of the truth of the matter, that there really are no rentals in this area. So people are usually looking for like back houses or properties that have two spots where someone's renting the other piece of it. And I'm not at the place where I'm looking to buy something. And even if I was, I've moved so many times in the past few years, I don't feel totally ready to commit like that.
What's your astrology again for the audience?
I'm Aries Sun, Gemini rising, and Virgo moon, and I'm a manifester for those that matters too.
Yes. Well, I just think that's so important because I think the Aries energy is so go get 'em and like very free spirited. And the fact that in confidence, part of your authenticity is being able to like move and go with the flow. Whenever you get a ping to do something, you follow it and it works out, and that is in alignment for you. And so even before you were thinking about this Topanga move, you were even looking at other cities too. You were like, oh, maybe that city could be cool, or where can I find community, and all of those things.
Yeah, totally. I think a big, limiting belief that I grew up with was that I was too impulsive, that like comes with the Aries energy of all of this. I was always changing my mind or coming up with a new decision about where I wanted my life to head or whatever it was. And I was sort of raised to feel like that was a bad thing. And now I've realized it's kind of a superpower because, I love change, and I've learned to view every impulse or spontaneity as a ping instead. And once I really started trusting that and leading into the spontaneity as pings instead of as a place to be self-critical, like, why can't I be consistent? Why can't I just be happy? Why aren't I satisfied now? I've realized that that's really my roadmap to the next manifestation, is following my pings. So I know that's kind of a murky area for some people in terms of like, what's a ping? How do I know if it's my intuition or just like another random thought? But for me, really leaning in and trusting those pings is, been the most powerful vehicle for manifestation.
And just to run through a checklist really quick for anyone who's trying to decipher from a ping or an impulsive or compulsive feeling. So a ping feels clear and direct. It feels like a calm knowing. There isn't a trigger or strong emotional reaction around it. There can be excitement, but you're not fearful or scared. It may not make logical sense, and it may feel a bit random, but it's high self-worth. Pings will never lead you back into a low self-worth pattern or behavior. Versus a compulsion or an intense just like impulsiveness would be leading you to a low self-worth pattern that you have been trying to break, or it's helping to aid you in avoiding your feelings and only helping to seek temporary relief. Because I know Daniel has the same thing. Impulsive is like a trigger word because he always has been very impulsive his whole life, but it's part of his superpower because anytime he gets really clear on it being ping, it works out like magic. It's wild. How do you feel the difference between sort of an impulsive pull and the pings? How do they come through for you?
I've realized that, if there's a desperation or intensity or like I need to have it now feeling around the ping or the hit of intuition or whatever it is, like it's not a ping and it's not my intuition. Whenever there's a sense of urgency, like we say on the love workshop, that's like the sign of a trauma bond, or that heightened emotion is clinging onto something that's maybe another trauma puzzle piece, but not the right thing for you. For me, it really comes down to like, having the feeling, sitting with it, watching to see that right idea like pop up in my life over the next few days or whatever it is. And in the case of manifesting my Topanga home, I spent a long time just sort of saying, if I'm meant to move over here, the right place will just present itself, and it won't be, this desperate, intense, aimlessly searching thing. And when I did find my place, I really just had a sense of peace, like, oh, I think that's my spot. And it all worked out. So I think it's that sense of calm as opposed to urgency and intensity about it.
And then kind of go back to some of the expanders you were looking at the time, hearing people say like, oh, you're never going to find that, or there's no rentals out here, blah, blah, blah. Because this happens so many times for people when they're manifesting, is their parents or their peers or someone around them is sort of discrediting their dream, their manifestation. And it's really hard, Lacey says, have manifestation blinders on, because you don't want to take in their own fears or self-doubts or whatever it may be. Because when you're manifesting, anything is possible and can happen. And so you just have to continually do the work to align with it. But you should never limit yourself or hold yourself back because someone says it's not possible.
I think related to that, a great practice to get into is not taking anyone's advice. I went through like a real soul searching period a few years ago of, doing a million sessions with astrologers and healers and human design people and psychics. And I was like all into it. And I wanted to know all they had to tell me. And basically every single person just was like, you're very independent. You're meant to be an entrepreneur. And I'm like, I know. Everybody's told me this. And all of that kind of fruitless paying for sessions. I spent all this money on it. I didn't really learn anything new about myself other than I needed to stop outsourcing my power and I needed to start looking inward. And that applies to, outsourcing your destiny to healers or psychics or people that you think can tell you what you need to do. It applies to not asking your parents or thinking that your mother has a better perspective of you because she has more life experience, or a coworker or somebody that you admire. Ultimately, you're the only one that needs to have that moment of clarity. And it's not based on anyone else's perception or interpretation or design for your life other than yours. So I think stepping into that for me and really getting strong on not taking in other people's thoughts or wishes for me. And I don't call my mom and say, do you think I should move here? I just sort of figure out what's right for me. And then I call and I say, hey, I've made this decision to move there. And that's really helped me ground into my own trust muscle and worth, and seeing that sense of I'm going to be led to the right things. And it's not somebody else that needs to validate that for me.
And so you started getting expanded. You had a friend that was living there in a similar price range. You started making a lot more friends over in that area. So you saw to believe it was possible to live in the space. So how did it go from there to actually connecting with the new spot?
So over the past few months, I've been spending more time there, going to local community events. They have a lot of cool community-centric things. And it's a very small community where like you go to the pizza place and people say hi to you, or, the chef that lives in town or whatever it is. And I sort of had that experience of, continuing to meet people locally, see their spots, ask how much they were, and being like, oh, this person found this at that price point, then I could have it. And I just saw more and more people in my experience through spending time in that area, had manifested what I was calling in. So that's also a good tip for people. Like if you think you want to move to another state or another part of town, go spend time there, go to the coffee shop regularly, meet some friends, go out in that area, say hi to people, because that's really a good way of finding expanders in a way that's not just online or through a friend. Getting to be a part of the community is really great. And then when I actually found the spot, there were a couple things in mind that I needed to be aware of. So my lease currently at my spot in Silver Lake doesn't end until February 2nd. So even though over the summer I had been quote unquote looking, I was a little wary of getting out of my lease early, and what does that look like, and would he make me pay, and all of that kind of stuff. I didn't want to jump the gun. I do like my current spot a lot. When I did manifest this place in Topanga, I cried and was like grieving, my current spot, because I love it so much and I love the experiences I've had there. And honestly, I feel like I could live another 5 years there, but this new option is just an up level in so many ways that, letting go of that was also a piece of this process. So when I finally did really feel like, oh, I'm going to just search Topanga rentals and see what's going to come up, it wasn't really because I was searching on a regular basis or getting alerts from Zillow or whatever. I just kind of had the calm sense, like, search Topanga rentals. This was 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday. And so when I searched it, I clicked on a random website, a place came up, it was in my price range, it was really amazing. And I just, like I said, had that calm sense about it. And I filled out the form and I didn't think about it at all after that. I didn't stare at it all day. I didn't send it to 10 million friends. I just felt really calm about it. And then that afternoon, the guy who owns the property called me and we talked on the phone for a while. He was just this older man who's lived there since the 70s. And he has 2 buildings on his property and he's always rented out the other building, which is now my house. And then he said, why don't you come by and see it tomorrow? And so I made sure to go at 9 a.m. So I was the first person to see it. And I brought my dog to meet their dog. And I, sat in their kitchen and talked to them for a while. And I really just got into their world and just enjoyed getting to know them and seeing their property. And then they called me later and were like, we liked you so much that we could have chose somebody that worked in corporate, but we feel that you would be a great neighbor. And so ultimately, they didn't really pick me because of my income or because I was trying so hard to impress them or whatever, but just because I showed up authentically and I spent some time with them and I didn't have a sense of urgency. I wasn't leaning on them or anything. And it just all kind of organically worked out. And in this situation, there was no realtor, there was no intense online application, or I wasn't competing against other people. They just picked me out and they liked me. And, I even have to pull my own credit score because they didn't know how to do it. So I think when the situation's aligned too, it doesn't have to be so hard and rigorous and you're not going to be lined up against 15 other people and hoping that you get picked. This was just like a real showing of being like, oh, this is my right place. And there's no betting on that.
I think the biggest thing too is your sense of trust and deservingness throughout the whole process. Like you were saying, there was no sort of desperate energy that was coming up that was like, I need to figure out if I'm living here. There's no lack of, there's never places like this out. This is the only place I've seen in months. I have to get it. All of that stuff almost didn't even penetrate your subconscious. You were kind of like, yeah, let's see what happens, and very loose and relaxed with it. And that's anytime big manifestations come in, or even little kismet ones, that's usually the energy that will present. And that's how it will feel. It will feel like you could already have it, you do already have it, or if you don't have this one, great, something better will come along. How do you prepare your mindset to lean into that level of ease? Because I'm sure there's people out there right now calling in some big things thinking I do not feel that sense of deservingness.
Yeah. Well, this is a little bit unrelated, but in the past couple of years, I've had so many dating experiences. And so I've had to get really good at saying no, because obviously all those people aren't the right people. And, I've gotten better at spotting red flags or tests, or maybe I just don't really like somebody, but, I can see the good in them and I want to give them a chance. But then I realize, okay, this isn't my person. And so I think over the past couple of years, I probably had to tell 12 people, sorry, I'm not interested. And that used to be the hardest thing for me ever. I didn't want to let anyone down. I really hated confrontation. I would get full body anxiety when I had to send a message to somebody or have that conversation. And I really started framing those situations as, if I do this, I will get magnetism. And even though that was a really challenging scenario for me to be in personally, I got really good at it, and I got to the point where when I felt like I needed to tell somebody, this isn't the right connection for me, it was really easy to do it. I didn't feel tense and I didn't feel anxious about it. I knew what to say and I knew how to be honest. And in all of that, I think I had to cultivate a sense of, this or better. Me saying no to this thing is not me forsaking any opportunity to be in a relationship. That's just making more room for another relationship. And I think the more I did that, the more I had a calm sense that something better is coming, and something better always did come. And so I think I've gotten really comfortable in the zone of knowing that the right situations and lessons and scenarios are finding me, and I don't have to try really hard to do it, and I don't have to hold on to anything too tightly or search too hard. I really stepped into a place of ease about it, and I think that practice really helped me in my whole life see that I don't have to force anything. When you're in a certain place of alignment because you've had enough practice in trusting that something better will show up, whether it's, a better client, a better pay opportunity, a better relationship, a better friendship, whatever it is, then you start to get in a flow of not being afraid anymore. And I think that really translated into this living situation where I had no sense of desperation, urgency. I know I didn't subscribe to the common LA rhetoric of you're going to be in a bidding war and you're going to have to pay 10 months of rent up front or whatever it was. And so all that practice in my dating life, I think really translated here to allowing me to be in trust.
I love that. I think that's so helpful. And, I'm sure you guys are starting to sort of weave all of this together too, but there's so many different elements at play here that all root down to the same thing. So you're calling in a home, but you weren't tested with a bunch of random apartments that could be your almost opportunity. You were tested on an emotional scale, both with previous states of your emotional levels of feeling maybe inferior or not good enough with the toxic boss from the past or in friend groups from the past. And then also this dynamic of how do I stand up for myself when I know this is not the right dating relationship for me? How can I consciously communicate? And how can I do it as quickly as I'm aware that this is not the fit? And if you look at those things, it looks like, okay, those are two core, we call them core wounds, but they're really just core themes that as you manifest anything, home, career, car, relationship, whatever, those dynamics may come up in another sense, and you can step higher and higher and higher in your self-worth along the way.
Right. And I think instead of seeing these as different categories, like home is one track, career is one track, relationship is the other track, you don't know why different things are bringing you to different places. Maybe I'm meant to move over here because I'm going to manifest my partner in this spot, and maybe that's why so many dating tests came up before. So I think the beauty of this manifestation practice is we're not manifesting to get each area of our life in perfect alignment in a silo. We're actually just moving forward on one track along our path. And each manifestation and new opportunity is catapulting all the other areas of your life.
Absolutely. It's all going back to, do I feel subconsciously worthy of this situation, whatever that is in? And as you raise your self-worth in any category, it is really reflective of all categories. It's you connecting back with your authenticity and true self.
So I'm quickly interrupting this episode to invite you, if you're ready to start your manifestation journey, or if anything you've heard in our manifestation episodes has piqued your interest, to begin. We have a la carte workshops in everything from the basics bundle, which is what we recommend to everyone who starts. It's the formula that actually teaches you how to manifest, unblocked inner child, and unblocked shadow. We also have a la carte workshops on love and money. But the real gem is the Pathway membership because it encompasses every single workshop we have. It's a year-long membership with full access to the few a la carte offerings we have and exclusive workshops not available anywhere else, such as the daily practice, which is what everybody in the Pathway uses, hopefully at least 3 times a week to daily, in order to truly create the new neural pathways that one needs in order to manifest, and houses the library of our deep imaginings, which is our unique hypnosis process that allows you to get into your subconscious and overwrite those old neural pathways, creating the new ones.
And for a limited time, we have our winter sale going on. So check the show notes if you are a new member signing up for a discount in order to join the Pathway.
Okay, now back to the episode.
And I think as it ties back to our process, there's many steps. There's the unblocking, expanding, passing tests, taking action, staying in trust, all of that kind of stuff. I think the area for me that has been most pivotal is taking action. And that's the area that, sometimes people forget about. Maybe they're spending too much time in the DIs or in the workshops. Yes, you should absolutely do those parts of it, but you need to balance that with actually getting out there and stepping through your fear and taking action. And at the same time, for me, I can get too caught up in the taking action space. And then I need to pull myself back into the workshops and back to the DIs and get still and, really come back to my thoughts about things. So I think it's a balance of doing the two things, and you can't just be in one box or the other.
That's such a good point. I definitely find myself leaning in either an action space or a deep imagining space and journaling and unblocking space, just because I love unpacking all of those layers. But for me, I notice when things really start to move, it's because I got some really big recent expansion. It's being in person with expanders or connecting with expanders or people that are really doing and living and breathing the things I want. And then things just go crazy.
And I think in the expander zone, what's interesting is, over the past year, I've met a lot of huge expanders, whether it be really successful people or people I've always wanted to meet or whatever that looks like. And they've come into my experience. And then for a second, you can feel like, why am I here? What is the purpose? How do I hold on to this? Do I need to network with this person? Do I need to start dating them? Do I need to come here all the time? And then you have to be like, wait a second. I don't need to do anything except for be here. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm aligned with these people, but I don't need to hang on to it. And in that practice of letting go of each experience, even if it's an amazing, wonderful experience, just letting it be what it is, that's also helped me shift into a deeper sense of self-worth, because I'm not clinging on to any person or experience as like my prize. Instead, I'm just accepting and having gratitude and being present and continuing to give what I have to give instead of trying to hold on so tightly.
You have to really think of yourself as like the star of your own TV show. Would the star of the TV show, I mean, they might, because it would make interesting TV, but would they hold on to every little sub character and never let go? Probably not for super long, because then you might get bored that this person is not growing and evolving, So same thing for expanders. Allow the expansion to exist and happen naturally. You really want to have faith that your path, however much you're connected to an expander, even if it's a one quick moment, like you're abundant in expanders, you're abundant in the opportunities that will present to you, you're abundant in the tests and situations that will come up for you, and really doubling down on that and knowing you're worthy of so much more than all of the programming that is layered on us.
Totally. And I think energetic shift that I had related to that, which I feel like has catapulted my manifestations in a big way, was realizing that, as we teach, your self-worth is already inherent. It's not based on your productivity, your contribution, your physical appearance, whatever that is. For me, it was always, I'm valuable because I'm a good worker, or because I'm going to do a job for this person, or for me, it's been because I'm physically attractive. And I feel like, people want me because of that, which I know is a very privileged place to be. But at the same time, it can put you into kind of a low self-worth place of, they don't really want me for me. They want me because I'm pretty, or they want me because I'm going to do a good job on their project. And in the past, I've really kind of sought out friends and relationships in those areas, like approaching people to work for them and showing them, look, I'm worthy, like I'm doing this job for you, which I think was, to combat that piece of that growing up. I felt that my value was placed in my physical appearance. And I think recently I've noticed the shift that when I'm in these new situations or social settings or whatever they are, nobody wants me there because I'm a good worker or because what I look like. People want me there because I'm me, because I'm funny, because I'm contributing to the group, because of my personality and my insight, and really seeing that shift of feeling wanted just for being me instead of because of my appearance or my work has shifted a lot of my self-worth into a higher spot of just knowing I'm worthy of being here just because I'm me.
Do you feel like in the past when maybe those things weren't as clear to you, that you sought out friendships that did only validate you because of your looks, or you sought out other friendships or dating situations that only did value you for your career skills or things like that?
I don't know if I was seeking them out, but I was definitely attracting them. I think growing up, a lot of my value was in my looks and in friend groups that presented in a way that, other girls weren't that nice to me, or people were jealous or mean or whatever that was. And I was always trying to show up with, graciousness and love and humor and all of those kinds of things. But I think subconsciously I had something going on that made me feel like my value was in my appearance. And so that was a big thing I had to work through growing up. And also, I remember in school, people would call me ditzy a lot. I have a higher voice, and I was sort of like put in that box. I was very curvy in high school. I don't know, but for some reason, I got put in like the ditzy pretty category. And I think to combat that, after college, I went full tilt career mode. And I was like hell bent on showing people that, like, look, I'm super smart. I did this project. I made this much money. I got this client. It was all based on my intellect, my skills, complete opposition. So like, while my accomplishments were amazing, they were sort of like to antidote that trauma that I had from growing up and feeling like I was only valuable for that. And I think, coming to a point of balancing that out, as I've gotten older and realized actually neither of those things are the point, has helped me really sink into a higher sense of self-worth.
And this is kind of more on just the existential spiritual tip of things, but I think it is really beautiful to look at how our triggers or pain points or whatever from the past has helped craft us to be the best version we can given the information that we had at that age. So, your young self witness the situation, examine your peers, say, okay, I'm not getting value for this thing. Let me go full tilt into this career mode. And that career mode actually got you really far. You have so much success in the career portion of your life. And I think how you worded it, it's pulling it back to balance. It's like, this thing did serve me, but now I need to integrate all the other parts of me that I can celebrate. I know I can do this. I'm no longer feeling inferior to not being able to be the smart person or the business savvy person in the room. I'm confident in that skill set. Let me bring this back into balance.
Like you said, it's a fine line between being like, my worth is inherent, but I'm not contributing anything, or I'm not working hard, or I'm not being a loving person, or whatever it is. Like, there needs to be sort of a baseline of striving, I think, in all of our experiences, because to strive is to grow. But it doesn't have to be so challenging, and it doesn't have to be to combat other trauma. And if it's coming from a place of authenticity and a place of service and love and, lifting each other up. And I think that's what we have in folds at the TBM team is, we've all checked our egos and we're all just excited for the company to grow. It really puts you into a space where you can realize like, oh, I'm the contribution. It's not my skill set or whatever it is. Although those things are important, you are the contribution.
Oh, I'm so excited for everyone to go into this sort of holiday season. And this is why we're doing the manifestation challenge starting now, because ruminating and sitting with all of these layers and levels and things that are coming up for us are even stronger around the holidays because it can be so triggering for so many people. And it's such a beautiful way to reframe it so we don't numb out. Because I know it's really easy as things get busy and travel and food and drinking and parties and, holiday parties and work things. And I think I saw someone share the other day, like, I'm prepared to sprint until the holidays, post Thanksgiving. And I just was like, but what if we don't have to sprint? Like, what if we can just exist and continue on and be conscious and co-creating with what's presenting for us during that time? Not saying we won't have stressful feelings and emotions that we'll work through, but we have so much more control than we even realize sometimes.
That's definitely showed up in my experience. I have divorced parents, and so the holidays are always kind of a weird time, going to one person's house and then the other person's. And, my dad's like, what do you want for Christmas? And you're like, gosh, I don't know. And I don't even feel that comfortable with you buying me something. We should probably work on our relationship first. So it becomes this kind of weird virtue signaling time of, I love you, here's a gift, and come sit at my house and eat something. And that means something. And to me, that doesn't really mean anything. To me, what means something is conscious communication and connection and people seeking each other out because there's genuine, authentic desire to get to know each other. And so last year, I sort of like put my foot down and I was like, you know what? I don't really want to go home for the holidays. My mom always goes to Florida where she spends half of the year. And this happens to be part of the year that I have off from work. So I just decided to come out here. And so, like this Thanksgiving, we didn't sit down and eat like a big turkey or exchange pleasantries with extended family members. So we went to the beach and went on a bike ride and ate something that we wanted to eat. And I know that's not always possible in everybody's situation, but I just challenge you to look at how much is this am I doing because I feel like I have to do it, or because I have to keep up appearances, or because I'm people pleasing, and what are my other options for this time of year? How can I honor myself and what I'd like to do and how I'd like to spend my time off? Because so many of us don't have any time off until the holidays, and then we have to spend it people pleasing. How can we sort of shift that into a time that's really restful and enjoyable? And, maybe you're just spending time with one person you really care about, but it means so much more.
I resonate with that so much. I think last year, especially because, of COVID and lockdowns, I think it was the first time that it gave my people pleasing an excuse to do what I actually wanted to do, was to not go anywhere. And so last year was the first time I didn't go home for Christmas pretty much my whole life. And in my head, I was like, well, I have to visit my dad on Christmas Eve, and then I have to be with my mom on Christmas Day, and then we have to see my grandpa. I want to spend time with family, but also at the end of the year, I also want rest. I want just time by myself, self-care, all of those things. And last year, it felt like I had more of an excuse to be like, yeah, it's not a good idea for me to travel. Everything going on, it's so crazy. So I'm just going to stay home. And now this year going into it, I was kind of like, okay, what do I really want out of this situation? I can create this situation. I can create this dynamic. I don't have to go home for Christmas. As much as it feels that pressure, or whatever holiday you may be celebrating, you can create something that might look different for you. And for me this year, it was like, okay, I'm going to stay home for Thanksgiving and give myself all that self-care. And I'll go home for Christmas because I haven't seen my family in a while, and it's my choosing, but I don't feel the obligation. And next year, I might change my mind. I want to go on vacation to some tropical island. Who knows? Taking your power back during this season can be really, really powerful.
Yeah. And I think related to that, how much of the people pleasing is happening because we feel responsible for other people's happiness? How much do we feel like, oh, I have to go home, or my grandma will be so unhappy, or my parents won't be happy with me, or whatever that looks like. And as much as we trust our unfoldment and our path to the universe, to this process, how can we trust that that's taking care of other people too? That we're not in charge of making other people happy, that we can wish them well and send them good vibes and chat with them on the phone and know that their journey, their lessons, everything is unfolding for them right the way it's supposed to. And we don't have to take responsibility for that.
And I think with family, a lot of times too, if there's people-pleasing dynamics going on and wanting to care for our loved ones because we genuinely do love them, there's emotions of grief coming up, whether that's grief because you can't take care of a family member in the way that you want to, and that you wouldn't be able to do even if you did people please in all the exact ways they wanted you to. Grief for transitional times moving past not being a child anymore, all of those things. I know it's always that really strong ping of nostalgia when you go back to a childhood bedroom and you have items in there and it just brings back different versions of yourself, or even grief for loved ones who have passed and having to sort of see what that dynamic is like over holidays when they're not there anymore, and creating new rituals and traditions. And it's a good time to self-nurture.
And to check in with all those things and, take inventory of them in the manifestation challenge, which is just going to catapult you into the next year. Because when so many triggers and tests can come up all at once, just like my situation with all the triggers and then the manifestation, that can be duplicated in all of our experiences in a more triggered time to a more heightened sense of manifestation instead of letting those suck us down the emotional hole.
So I just wanted to share one more little story that I had with a Pathway member via DMs, and I thought it was really helpful to understand how to navigate when some of these sort of tests pop up, especially around the holidays and understanding deservingness. So this member writes, I'm calling in abundance and the unexpected bills are coming like there is no tomorrow. I can afford to pay them all with my allowance for December, except for the most expensive one. I planned on treating myself to a really nice, pricey massage with my December allowance to reinforce my deservingness. If I cancel the massage, my whole allowance goes to bills. The last expensive bill I can pay in January. Would it be more in my worth to treat myself to the massage and pay the expensive bill the month after, or just pay them all and cancel the massage? And so my question back to this person was really understanding the energetics behind each. I said, what would you be communicating about your worth if you canceled? And what would you be communicating if you honored the massage? Do you typically overspend on things for yourself, or do you avoid spending on things for yourself? Was this a stretch through fear to take care of yourself in a good way? Or was this a way to avoid paying for the things that you've spent money on? And I thought they were for sure going to say they don't take care of themselves, blah, blah, blah. And in that instance, I would have suggested they keep the massage. But they said, I actually usually overspend. I often treat myself too much. So in this case, is doing the opposite, creating more magnetism. And this is why this practice is so nuanced, because this member's patterning is that they overspend on luxurious things from themselves and are unable to pay for them in time. Now they're finally at a place where they can pay for them, but they have this pricey massage. In this very specific instance, canceling the massage and taking care of all of their bills in 1 month is going to be the thing that is magnetic for them. If they were never able to spend money on themselves and treat themselves to nice things, then keeping the massage would be magnetic for them. And so I asked her, what do you think is the core root of your block around abundance? You're creating magnetism when you walk through fear in the direction of your highest self-worth. And she said, for sure, I'm a compulsive spender. My mom was always spending all my parents' money on anything she wanted. Both my parents grew up in lack, and my mom was told no a lot. So if she can't have something, she gets very triggered, throws tantrums. And my dad always just says yes to her. Now, whenever she has money, she compulsively buys expensive things. My parents are in a lot of debt because of it. It's interesting because my parents have a similar dynamic with me, where they struggled to say no to me and bought me anything I wanted if I threw a tantrum, even if they couldn't afford it. And then she said, wow, writing this message is such a breakthrough. It's almost feeling like you have the money, now enjoy it because you're going to be broke soon. And that's the pattern she needs to break. And so it's just really, I thought this was such a good example of breaking down the fear of moving through a test or trigger that may be coming up and really trying to get to the root. What is my patterning? What have I been doing that maybe isn't working anymore? And how can I step through fear in an aligned way to change the pattern and to call something else new in?
And I can deeply resonate with this one because this tends to be my pattern as well. I don't have a tremendous amount of lack mentality personally, but I am somebody who never doesn't treat myself. I always buy whatever I want and often overspend. And I've been going through the same challenge this year of being like, this is one of the first times I've carried a balance on my credit card, but there's like 10 million things that I want. But what would be the more magnetic place to be? It would be to master discipline and to pay off my credit card. And that's where I would be feeling more self-worth on the other side than if I were to, buy a new wardrobe. And I could justify that represents my highest self or whatever it is. But in my case, that's just spiritual bypass, because the lesson for me is the discipline and knowing that what I pay the credit card off I'll be in a more magnetic space. And that's exactly what I was thinking when I listened to the testimonial at the beginning. I was like, if this person overspends, then they should probably pay it off, even though that feels like the counterproductive one to the manifestation practice. Because ultimately, it's not about treating yourself or high self-worth things like massages. It's just about high self-worth. And sometimes that shows up as a massage. Sometimes it shows up as paying your bills. And you need to be able to look at them in the same way, even if one is more fun.
So well said. Oh, thanks for sharing your dynamic, Grace. That was so helpful.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and that's exactly what she wound up saying. She goes, I think I need to pay them all and sit with the compulsive feeling of not spending to get me through this month. That thought actually makes me feel withdrawals already. Oh, man.
And I've noticed in my own life, spending is just like another form of addiction. Once you start spending, then you want to spend more. Then you're like, well, I've already blown my budget. I'm just going to spend more money. And then all of a sudden you're like, gosh, now I have all this debt and I don't even like any of these things. Or I ate all my money at Erewhon or whatever it looks like. And once you get in a habit of not spending as much, that starts to feel good too. So as it relates back to patterning, that's another area where we can quickly change course. And, any route you take and become quote unquote addicted to, whether it's spending or not spending, can become the fun path. So, that's definitely helped in my experience to just like really double down and go cold turkey on spending and be like, I'm going to pay off my credit card or whatever it is. And then I find that those tendencies, start to fall off a bit.
What would be one tip you would share with the TBM community about maybe something you learned from your manifestation process, or maybe just things that, from talking with friends who are, trying to continue their spiritual and manifestation practices, some guiding light, or maybe something you would even say to a younger version of yourself that needed to hear it?
Well, I think as it pertains to my Topanga home manifestation, I'll share just the last piece of the manifestation was, the harmonious transition with my current landlord. And I remember voice noting you, Jessica, telling you that I found the spot and now I had to tell my landlord and I was all nervous about it. Is he going to let me out of my lease early? Is he going to be mean about it? Is he going to make me pay more? And you were really like, this is such a harmonious manifestation, like it's going to flow. And when I did end up telling my landlord a couple of days later, he was like, you've been a wonderful tenant. This is so awesome. Congratulations. Let's get somebody else in. And then I ended up posting my place on my Instagram. Now my place has 20 applications and my landlord let me out of my lease a month and a half early. So in all of that, I think the big thing I learned was, when it's meant to be, when it's your manifestation, when you're in your right place, when the right decision has been presented, there's not a single piece of it that's going to be out of alignment. There's not one complicated person or one big last trigger to overcome. In my experience, that all came before the manifestation. And then my proof that it was the right manifestation was that everything was in such flow that even that piece of it was completely taken care of. For me, the advice I would give my younger self is to stop justifying the wrong decisions because I want to will them into happening. Stop justifying the wrong person or the wrong place or the wrong job when it is really in alignment. Everything will feel that way. And once you can start to have more experiences that do feel in total flow like that, your trust muscle will get stronger and stronger in knowing that you deserve that. And I've justified so many, like I said, wrong relationships and wrong clients and wrong friendships when I've really known the answer or when there has been a really difficult thing presenting and I've thought, oh, I just need to push through. There's that like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger mentality. But as far as manifestation goes, you deserve to have an experience that's 100% harmonious and in alignment. And seeing that aspect of it is actually the highest form of deservingness.
Oh, love that. Yeah, even it was funny when you did voice note me about the place coming through. I mean, it was all so kismet. It was just with such ease that it came through. And it was funny, even maybe a couple weeks or a month before your Topanga place came through, you had said, yeah, I'm kind of thinking about, I really think I want to move to Topanga. That feels like the right space for me now. I was like, oh, you're going to manifest a place so quickly. I just know it's going to come. Watching from the outside of your patterning and how quickly things move for you, I was just like, nope, I see it happening so fast for you. And it did. And then when it came through with ease, it's not like you're going to have everything comes with ease and then all of a sudden a huge roadblock pops up in the middle of nowhere. Continue to have that inner peace and allow yourself to receive what's coming through. I think that's an important piece too.
And I think for whoever's saying like, oh, wow, her experience sounds so easy, or she works for TBM, of course the process is easy for her. I would say that it's been all the practice of saying no to things, breaking off those relationships. Right now I'm full-time with TBM, but for years before I had maybe 10 clients at a time, and I got really good at saying, this client isn't aligned anymore. This relationship doesn't feel good. I have a feeling this is going to be a toxic relationship. And that, again, was the same trigger as breaking off relationships, was breaking off work dynamics and confrontation, saying no, people pleasing. That's my biggest trigger. So it's been like over the past 5 years that I've spent really doubling down on my trust and really getting good at saying no, writing dump texts and dump emails and getting rid of clients. And not because I'm scared or I'm not capable or whatever, but because I have that sense that something is off. I would say, I've been in 100 situations at that point where I've gotten really good at just saying no and moving into the next right space, that now things are coming with ease. But if you're at a place in your journey now where you've just been going along with everything your way, and now you're not that happy because you haven't really consciously chosen your life, that's okay. But let's look at your life and say, what's one small area that I can start saying no, and where I can start taking my power back, and where I can start choosing and curating my life. And then that trust muscle will get stronger and stronger, and you'll be able to do that in bigger areas of your life.
Exactly. Oh, so excited to have you guys part of this challenge this year and to start taking action on all of these things now. And yeah, connect with Grace. You have to share your Topanga spot on Instagram so people can see all the BTS.
I know, we can put it on the show notes page. I'm moving in. Well, I have to be out of my current spot by the 14th. So I'm in Florida right now with my mom, like I said, but now I really need to get home and move out because I'm basically being forced out of my house because there's so much demand at this point.
So exciting. Well, congratulations, and excited to see what you call in next. And we're excited to connect with all of you guys in the Manifestation Challenge or on the podcast next week. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, we did. And in case you're not totally ready to join the pathway yet, I wanted to share a few of our free offerings that I'll often suggest to people as a little bit of a blueprint to get them started on their manifestation journey. The first place I like to direct people completely for free is the motivation. You can see it linked below or on our homepage as our testimony library. And it's categorized by different subjects, whether you're calling in career, money, love, wellness, and much more. When you're reading about a member's experience of what they manifested, you're actually seeing to believe and showing your subconscious that that very thing is possible for you. The second place I like to direct people is to the free clarity exercise, which is also linked below. In it, you get to try our own unique hypnosis process, learn about the science, and some journaling prompts. And the best part about this, you'll get a tiny taste of what it's like to go into your hypnotic state, bring your subconscious forward, and create new neural pathways while receiving clarity. And the third thing, if you haven't listened to it on this podcast yet, please go back to the episode titled Manifestation 101, where you'll learn the basics of neural manifestation to truly understand this process. So go ahead and check out those free resources, the motivation, the free clarity exercise, and the episode Manifestation 101, all linked below. And in an effort to make sure to have representation in this process series, go ahead and submit any process testimonials you have, especially to our LGBTQ+ community, our BIPOC, as well as the Ys, which is anyone in the community who is 45 and over. All right, we'll be back next week.